Hello everyone. In our last class we have discussed about the risk management, and today we will, in continuation of that, we will cover some more topic. It is risk identification, risk projection, risk refinement, RMMM and RMMM plan. So first of all, we will see the overview on this topic. That is, we have learned that what is the risk. Okay, then risk, as we know that what is a risk. Risk are the potential problem that might affect the successful completion of the software project, and this risk may happen in any of the project or anytime, okay, anywhere. So what we have to do it, that is, we have to do the risk analysis and management, okay, in order to help the software team understand and manage the uncertainty during this development process. So most importantly, what we have to do is that we have to make the proper plan to minimize this kind of the risk impact, right? So we, after doing all these things, we will find a product that is called the risk mitigation monitoring and management, that is RMMM. Okay, so this is what we are going to discuss in this class. And first of all, now let's start with the risk management steps. That is, identify the possible risk, recognize what can go wrong, and analyze each risk to estimate the probability that it will occur and the impact. Then rank the risk by probability and impact. Then finally, we have to develop a contingency plan to manage those risks. So it is, the first thing is that to identify the risk, isn't it? Then we will try to understand that risk to estimate the probability of that impact. Then we will make the rank, that is the most priority one, the most for example, the catastrophic, comparing with that, say some risks are there that we have identified. Okay, so like negligible, marginal, critical, and catastrophic. So which one we will try to solve it first? Okay, that is, we, instead of solving the negligible one, we will try to focus more on the catastrophic one. Okay, so that way we will try to develop it, and then as we know that if anything may happen due to this risk, then we have to have a contingency plan. Okay, this is all the steps about the risk management. And then risk identification. So risk identification, it doesn't focus only on that software risk. So let's try to have a general meaning of the risk identification first. That is, it's a process of determining the risk that could potentially prevent the program or enterprise or maybe investment from achieving its objective. Okay, then what exactly the specific meaning of this, our risk identification? Let's see, with respect to our topic concern, the risk identification is a systematic attempt to specify the threats to the project plan. So by identifying the known and the predictable risk, and the project manager take first step towards avoiding them, and when possible, and then they have to do the controlling, right? So it means that we have to have a systematic approach or systematic attempts to specify what are the possible risks to the plan. Then the project manager, actually it is their responsibility that they have to try to identify and avoid, and if necessary, then they have to control when it has happened. Okay, so most of these the risk that they have to identify is from the known and predictable risk. Okay, and so we can categorize this risk broadly into two categories, that is generic risk and product specific risk. So generic risk means that the risks that are like potential threats to every software project. Maybe it is a product size, or maybe the business or the business impact and customer characteristics and process definition, etc. And then regarding the product specific risks, these are the risks, okay, that can be identified only by those with a clear understanding of the technology and the people and the environment that is specific to the software that is to be built. Okay, so accordingly, what we have to do is that we have to prepare a project plan and then estimate the scope. Okay, so we really need to do is that we have to make a proper planning of the risk, okay, and the project scope. Okay, statement of the scope has to be identified and then examine it, and finally what special characteristics of the product may be treated into our project plan. These are the things that we have to identify during this process. Then risk item checklist. Okay, we have a certain risk items that has to be checked out. So first of all, use as a one way to identify the risk, and secondly, focus on the known and the predictable risk in specific categories that we will discuss in the next slide, and can be categorized in the several ways. So a list of characteristics relevant to each risk subcategory. Then we may need to prepare some kind of the questionnaire that leads to an estimate on impact of each risk. Okay, then it also have to we can do it like a list that containing a set of risk component and drivers, that is cost drivers, okay, and their probability of the occurrence. These are the things that we have to check out during our risk identification. And now we know that while we are identifying the risk, what we can identify the the risk that we can identify is only the known and the predictable risk, isn't it? That there is something which is unknown, we cannot predict it. So only the known and predictable risk only we can identify. So as some of the list is given here, like product size, so this is known to us, isn't it? So it's known to us, like a risk associated with the overall size of the software to be built or modified. This is known to us, so we can identify any kind of the risk related with this product size. The same is like business impact and customer characteristics and process definition, okay, and development environment. These are all what we have learned in the last class. So these are the known and the predictable risk. So like say, pick up the example like technology to be built, risk associated with the complexity of the system to be built, and the newness of the technology that is packaged by the system. Yes, this is a predictable only, isn't it? So like staff size and experience, that is, it's a risk associated with the overall technical and project experience of the software engineers who will do the work. So these are all known to us, and so since it is known to us, we can have we can predict the possible risk also, right? So we have to identify all this kind of the the risk, okay, whatever the possible risk. And then let's see that we have to say, if you identify, then what are the risks. Okay, so we have to actually record this kind of the risk into record, okay, that is called a risk record, okay. Risk information are recorded. Then let's see with the example how do we record it. Say suppose there is a project, then definitely the project should have a name, then we have given the name of the project. All right, and then a risk type, so there may be so many risk type. And what is the risk type here? We in this example I'm giving, like here the risk type is a schedule risk, that is time, okay, that time related risk for the project. And priority are starting from the low till critical, and let's say catastrophic, as we have already learned about the priority. And then we can give it that, suppose if it is very much critical, then you can give it say number 1, okay. So risk factors, so what are the risk factors here? Project say completion will depend on the test which require hardware components under the development, and hardware components delivery may be delayed. So these are some of the risk factor, isn't it, that may cause the risk. So they may delay, okay, that may impact onto the schedule, okay. So this has to be identified. These are in this example that we have identified that the factor that may cause under this risk type, that is a schedule risk, is that maybe because of this hardware component under development, right, and the hardware component delivery may be delayed. And the probability of this risk schedule risk, that is 60% that we have now predicted and we have identified, because only from the known and predictable one. And then the next is that impact. What about the impact is recorded like a project completion will be delayed for each day that hardware is unavailable for use in software testing. Because here we say that according to this our identification, so our risk factors, according to our identification, we have found that our risk the factor is that hardware component, isn't it? Hardware components are under development, means that it's not ready to use it now. So hardware component delivery may be delayed. So since it is under the development, this delivery is delayed, okay. So if it is delayed, and then what is the impact here is that hardware is unavailable for use in software testing. So definitely know that it will the impact will goes to the our schedule. So there is a schedule risk of delaying the product is there. Then monitoring approach has to be recorded, that is schedule milestone review with the hardware group. So we have to, if we know that during the software planning only, this is our project planning only, isn't it? So everything is we are doing during the project planning. Then if you know already that there is some risk, okay, in that there is some risk, because in this production of the software, because the hardware that we are going to use in this software is still not ready, okay, it's not yet ready, then definitely that it will delay, isn't it? We cannot use it on time, then it will definitely delay. So it is known to us, that is why it is a schedule risk, isn't it? And then if that is a schedule risk, definitely what we have to do is that monitoring approach should be the monitoring approach should be the schedule milestone, because this is only way that how we can monitor the schedule, isn't it? Then contingency plan, definitely if any whenever we develop a software, we should have a contingency, because anything may happen while we are developing this software, the project. So we should have a contingency plan. And in this case, in this example, our contingency plan is recorded as a modification of testing strategy to accommodate delay using the software simulation. This is our contingency. Okay, it's just like a backup plan. Okay, then estimated resources, 6 additional persons may be required. Okay, then beginning, so every as we know that every software the project should start. Okay, starting from this we need the 6 additional persons because we have found some risk in, especially in the schedule. Okay, that is the type. According to this we have to make out the contingency. Okay, this is an example of how do we record the risk. Then next is assessing the project risk. Okay, this is very important part. That is, say, in order to assess the project risk, so we have to ask a lot of questions. That is, so that we can identify the importance, no, of the project success. That is related to the project success. We have to make out some questions or what are the possible the risk. Okay, the questions are here, that is listed out here. The most commonly asked questions for assessing the project risk is: have a top software and the customer managers formally committed to support the project? Okay, they are committed. Are they ready to support the project? Yeah. Are the end users say enthusiastically communicated to the project and the system or the product to be built? If they do not communicate it, then we may have certain risk. Communication gap may be there and misunderstanding, and finally it may lead to certain unexpected development of the project. Then this is also one of the factor of the that project development, the not achieving the project objective. So are the requirement fully understood by the software engineers team and each customer? Okay, so that means we have to identify all the requirement that is both agreed by the customer as well as the engineer. Okay, the developers. So have the customer been involved fully in in the definition of the requirement? Okay, so likewise, so many other questions are there that has to be asked. Okay, so that we can assess all kind of the risk, okay, relative to our project success. And now the components and the drivers. So this is the risk component and the risk drivers are very important part here in doing the risk identification. That is, say, the risk driver affecting each risk component, okay, are classified according to their the impact category and the potential consequences of each undetected software fault or unachievable project outcome are described. Now here, that when our project manager, okay, project managers identify the risk drivers, okay, that affecting the different the factors. So what are those components? Okay, let's see that. That is performance risk. Okay, maybe this one of the risk driver. Okay, this may drive our achieving the objective of the project. Okay, not achieving, the risk delayed in achieving the project objective, isn't it? Any kind of the risk, it's not only delayed, it may even it may falls to the even crash also, isn't it? So that's why we have to understand clearly that what are the risk drivers, okay, that affect the different components of the project. So the first component is the performance. Maybe there may be an impact on the performance, that is the performance risk. Okay, that is called the performance risk. Then the degree of uncertainty that the product will meet its requirement and be fit for its intended use, that is the performance, isn't? Then the same way here, cost risk. Cost, it may again affect to the cost also, that is what we call the cost risk. Here, that is the degree of uncertainty that project budget will be maintained. So if the project budget, if it is we are getting where a project budget is less than what we have estimated, then is okay, but it did not happen. So mostly it is budget is over budget, isn't it? Over budget, there is a chance of over budget, so we have to maintain. In order to maintain that project budget, we have to monitor that. And so what are the risk factor that may that affect this cost, that is the degree uncertainty. Okay, degree of uncertainty in terms of the cost of the project. Okay, then support risk, the same thing like others. Here support is nothing, that is uncertainty that resultant software will be easy to correct and adapt and enhance. These are all support. And schedule risk, this is the most common risk again, like that the uncertainty that the project schedule will be maintained and that the product will be delivered on time. So in order to have these components, what are the drivers? Okay, what are the drivers that affect, okay, has to be identified. That is, what are the risks that affects to the performance, that affects to the cost, that affect to the support schedule. Okay, and now the impact of each driver, okay, its risk driver on the risk component is divided again into 4 impact level. This is most common one, and in some other books you will find even the 5 also. So I just start with the negligible one, not from the low. Okay, some other start with the low, negligible, like that. So start from the negligible, marginal, critical, and catastrophic. These are the impact level, which one is the most critical one. Okay, so that we can give a different priority okay, of the risk. And now one thing is that there is some other point also, that when we see this risk driver, can be again, that risk driver itself can also be assessed as like impossible, improbable, probable, and frequent. Okay, now risk projection, this is also known as the estimation, risk estimation. Here the risk projection or that risk estimation attempts to rate each risk into 2 ways. Okay, this it's 2 ways, that is, one is that likelihood, or we say that probability, okay, that the risk is real. The likelihood or probability, okay, let's remember this because we are going to use even in the future topic also. Then consequences. Okay, then second thing is that consequences, which is very, very important. Consequences of the problems associated with the risk. Okay, should it occur, that is, if something has happened, there is always consequences. All right, so that way our project, the risk projection or estimation is divided into 2 two ways, that is one is a likelihood or probability, and then one is the consequences of the problems associated with the risk. That risk, that is, should it occur? No, that the question is that should it occur? And then the project planner along with the other managers and technical staff perform the 4 risk potential projection activities. So let's see what are those activities that we do perform together. That is, establish a scale that reflects the perceived likelihood of risk. We normally it's given up to from 1 to 10, that is starting from low to high. This is, we just give a scale that how much that impact it is, how much that, so that we can estimate the project risk. And then secondly, we also delineate the consequence of the risk, and third, we estimate the impact of the project risk on the project and the product. Impact of the risk on the project and the product. This is project and product both. And then fourth, note the overall accuracy of the risk projection so that there will be no misunderstanding. This way we used to do these 4 activities during the risk projection. And the intent of this step is to consider risk in a manner that leads to prioritization. Here, know that there are 5 risks. For example, there are 10 risks. So whatever the risk I listed out, it should be, we have to try to avoid all time all those kind of the risk. Is this the way? No, it's not like that. If whatever the identified risk, then you have to categorize it according to the means we have to prioritize it. Not the categorize. We have to prioritize it. So by prioritizing the risk, the software team can allocate the limited resources where they will have the most impact. So this is why we have to do the prioritization. Why we need to do the prioritization? Because the software team can allocate the limited resources where they will have the most impact. Now developing a risk table. So in order to do all these things, we used to we already recorded the risk, isn't it? Identified risk has been recorded, and that way here also we can develop a risk table. That is here what will be there in the risk table. How to develop the risk table? Let's see. We can develop a risk table. To provide a project manager. This is a risk table provides a project manager with a simple techniques for the risk projection. So this is the one of the tool in the sense that on the process that we used to do it during the risk projection. Developing risk table will include these activities. That is, we have to list all the risk in the first column of the table, before, while we are identifying, while we are recording the risk, and we used to give the project name, and then we used to give the type of the risk, isn't it? So what are the risk factors? So the way here also we used to make a table. In this case we are going to maintain this information in the form of a table which include these things. That is the risk the list of the risk. Then we have to classify each risk and enter the category. That is, category has to be maintained. There are different category of the the risk that we have already discussed in the last class. Then determine the probability for each risk. Okay, and no, these are all like, no, we have to make a column, the table that we will see in the next slide. And then so we are saying that what we have to do is that we have to list all the risks. Okay, then we have to classify each risk and enter their category. Okay, and then determine the probability of the risk for each risk, and then enter the severity of each risk, that is so that we can give the priority, isn't it? And then next thing is that sort the table by probability and impact value, means that more impact, okay, and more impact, having the more impact will come to the top level. And determine the criteria for deciding whether the sorted table will be divided into the priority concern and second priority concern. Okay, so priority concern must be again managed, that is fifth column may be required. Okay, that can be added to contain a pointer to the RMMM, that is we will discuss about this, what is there, that is the risk, okay, mitigation, monitoring and management. So as I have said that what are the table, we used to maintain this in a table, that is first of all list all the risk. Okay, then we have to identify the risk category. Okay, then the third is a probability, that is based on the risk occurrence, that probability has to be risk here. And what are the impact, the possible impact. Okay, that average is given, that say like catastrophic number 1, critical number 2, then marginal number 4, negligible, then negligible number 4, like that. Okay, as according to what are the possible impact, then we can give it 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Okay, so finally we have to make a pointer to this RMMM, okay, for the next plan. Then we'll see with the example here the risk, this table, risk table example here. We are in this case, so we are now here we are giving the list out all the risks. Okay, so these are the possible identified risk. Okay, based on our project. Based on our project, we have identified the possible risks from the known and predictable risks. Okay, so you can identify like this. Here we are giving a lot, that size estimate may be significantly low, isn't it? That our that size is significantly low, maybe a larger number of the users than the plan, or less reuse than the plan, end user resist the system. Okay, so likewise funding will be lost. So these are some possible risk that we identified. Okay, that means based on our project. Finally should be based on our project. We cannot just think that any project. So suppose we have a XYZ project XYZ, so whatever the possible risk of the project XYZ, okay, this is only that has to be highlighted. Okay, then category, we have different categories that we have like discussed in the last class, not in this class. That is like I just bring like here for your say ready reference, like we have project risk, product risk, technical risk, business risk, and so many the different types of the risk we have learned it. So like here also say project size. Okay, the here the project risk is given here, that is the project size. Okay, or the product risk is given. Okay, and like a BU for the business risk. Supposing here we have a product risk of say 60% product risk. Okay, then the impact may be say number 2. What is the number 2 here? We have seen that is the catastrophic is number 1, isn't it? Then this may be the critical, number 2. Okay, then number 3 is marginal. Okay, if it is negligible, then we give it number 4, isn't it? So if any point is required, then you have to mark over here in this 5th column. Okay, this is an example of this, how to maintain a risk table. Okay, developing a risk table that we have discussed here. You can have a look once again if it is required. Okay, then risk exposure, or also known as a risk, okay, impact. Here there are mainly we have the 3 factors that affect the consequences. Okay, consequences that are likely if a risk does occur. Likely if a risk does occur, then what are the factors that affect? This is maybe its nature, okay, its scope, or its timing. So here you please do remember that the 3 factors affect the consequences. Okay, 3 factors that affect the consequences that are likely if the risk does occur. Is that it's a very general only. Okay, if the risk does occur, then what can happen? Means there may be that the problems that are likely, if the risk occur, some nature of the risk. Okay, that is its nature, right? And then it combines this say severity of the risk, that is how serious was it, that is defined in the scope. Okay, and then its timing, that is this consider when and for how long the impact will be left, that is how long it will be still remain there. Okay, the impact, one impact is there, so one risk is there and some impact has been happened. Okay, that means a risk is happened. So at the very beginning what happened is that we identify the risk, isn't it? Now consider that the risk has happened. Okay, so the risk does occur, means it's happened. Then there will be definitely some consequences, isn't it? So what we have done, remember once again, you identified it, isn't it? You have recorded everything, you have assessed all the risk, isn't it? You have assessed all the risk, and now the risk, you think that risk is occurred. Okay, the risk does occur now. Then if has happened, what will be there? Then there will be surely some consequences of that risk, isn't it? That may affect the nature, that may affect the scope, and that may affect its timing. Okay, so we can say find out the risk exposure by using a formula, that is P by C. Okay, means the product of the P and C, product of the P and C, P into C will be able to give you the risk exposure. Okay, so where the P is the probability of the occurrence for the risk, probability of the occurrence of the risk. Then C, the cost of the project should the risk occur. Okay, the cost to the project, remember here this is not the the project cost. Okay, this is the cost to the project. Cost to the project should the risk occur. Okay, remember this formula so that we can see with some example. And here we'll pick up this example that imagine that risk identified. Okay, we have identified the risk that is only 70% of the software components scheduled for reuse will be, okay, in fact be say integrated into the application. The remaining functionality will have to say be customized. Okay, then our risk probability is 80%. This is that what we are doing, okay, in the during the risk identification in this example, and our risk probability is 80% likely. And then risk impact, now here the risk impact is 60 reusable software components were planned. Okay, 60 reusable software components are planned. Okay, from the previous component 60 we are going to reuse it, isn't it? If only 70% can be used, okay, if only 70% can be used, and then 18 components would have to be developed from the very scratch. Okay, in addition to other custom software that has been scheduled for development. That means we are going to make this 18%, okay, 18 component, not a percent, okay, 18 component would have to be developed from the very the scratch. This is customized, totally customized, and we are going to use a 60 we are going to reuse it 60 component, okay, and 18 are we are going to develop it from the very scratch, and then we are going to integrate with the other part of the software. So since the average component is 100 lines of code, okay, and local data indicates that the software engineer cost for each line of code is this is simple example, okay, and then $14. The overall cost impact to develop the component would be then 18 into 100 into 14, that is equal to $25,200. okay, this is the your RE value of the RE. Okay, so but now the value these are the your cost. Okay, the cost has been calculated and the RE is percent. No, what you have to now convert it. This is 18%. 80% is we have given here. The risk probability is 80%. That means 0.80 into the cost, okay, to the project, the risk cost to the project, right, is similar to, this may not be exact figure because this is simply similar to me. This is a round of figure of this, okay, this product. Clear? So this way we can find out the cost is calculated here. We are finding out the cost first because the question in this our example we already have the risk probability, that is the 80%. okay, 80% is there. Okay, so the risk exposure is find out by using the formula P into C, isn't it? Okay, so that way we can get the risk exposure. And now risk refinement, risk assessment and risk refinement, these are alternately we use it. So what we No, this is a risk assessment. Once again, let's have a look. That is it define the different levels of for each project risk that can cause the project termination, performance degradation, cost overrun, support difficulty, schedule slippage. So these are the different project risk. Attempts to develop the relationship between its risk, that is what are those possible risks, that is a risk probability, impact, and each of the reference level. This relationship, that we have to attempt to develop this relationship between its risk triple and each of the reference level. Right, so actually by this is try to predict how the combination of the risk will be affect to a referent level. This is what we are going to assess it, we are going to do it. And in the refinement, we are going to say, as I said, that it is also known as means we also call the risk assessment. Actually what we used to do here is that is a refine the risk. This refines the risk table, though we have already had the risk table recorded already. In reviewing the risk impact based on what we have done, it was on nature, scope, and timing, isn't it? Just now we have seen that based on the three factors, that is the nature, scope, and timing. So like that is the likely problems if the risk occur, means that is a nature, isn't it? Scope, that is just how serious is it. Timing, when and how long the risk will be occurred, isn't it? So we also have seen that how to get the risk exposure. Only thing is that here we are going to refine using the same things, that is by using some other techniques. So process of in this case actually in addition to the assessment, what we are going to the refinement is that this is same like a assessment only, but we are going to do restating. Restating, we have been stated, we have been assessed, but we are going to restating the risk as a set of more detailed risk that will be easier to, what is our objective, that is easier to, we have to point out now here, that is mitigate, monitor, and manage. We are going to mitigate, monitor, and manage the risk. So this will really help us to do it more easily. So risk refinement here is actually we used to do it during the early stage of the project planning. So risk may be stated quite generally during the early stage of the project planning. As the time passes, and more is learned about the project and the risk, it may be possible to refine the risk into a set of more detailed risk. So we used to this is already been identified during the project planning, isn't it? But you know that as long once we have started the project and everything is supposed on process, so we have to learn more about the project, and we after we started the project we may find more risk that has to be identified again, isn't it? Then so risk assessment we used to do it throughout the project. That is kind of the project testing, isn't it? Then see say more, there is some more way of refining that that our risk. Okay, so this is what we used to call the risk refinement. And here how we used to represent this risk is just doing CTC. Okay, CTC means condition is there, so what is the condition, and then transition will be there, and then what are the consequences. Okay, this is a one way to represent this risk in during the project refinement. Okay, so given that the condition is there, and then there is a concern that possibly consequences, right? So there will be a condition will be there, and then there will be, and again, the possibility possibly consequences of the project will be risk will be there, so that we used to calculate it here. Then we can see with this simple example here also. So using the CTC format for the following risk identification, that is only 70%. Now just now the same as what we have discussed, the 70% of the software components should be scheduled for reuse will in fact be integrated into the application. So the remaining functionality will have to be custom developed. This is what that is just we have practice for calculating the project that risk exposure, isn't it? So then we can write how we can do that. It is given that all the reusable software component must conform to specific design standard, and that some do not conform, then there is a concern that possibly is there, right? Only 70% of the planned reusable modules may be integrated into the say as build system, means that the new system. Okay, then resulting in the need of the custom engineer and the remaining 30% of the component, isn't it? So this way we can just do some kind of refinement can be done as the project started, and we got the more experience and more way of finding the refining the risk that is already been identified. Okay, so here one thing we have to remember during the refinement is that in general there will be the conditions. Okay, in general conditions can be refined as a following manner, that is a different condition. Okay, that is sub conditions, condition 1, 2, 3 and so on. Then say certain reusable components were developed by third party with no knowledge of the internal design standard. This is the condition 1. Okay, then condition 2 is that the design standard for component interface has not been solidified and may not conform to certain existing reusable component. Okay, so likewise we also can check on the another condition, because we refine on the different conditions, isn't it? Then so the third condition here is that certain reusable components have been implemented in a language that is not supported on the target environment. So these are some that conditions, okay, that we do refinement on the conditions. Okay, so here in that example also we have seen that the consequences associated with this refinement subconditions remain the same, that is 30% of the software component must be customer engineered, but the refinement helps to isolate the underlying risk and might lead to easier analysis and response. Okay, this is how and why we do the risk refinement. Okay, now coming to the risk mitigation, monitoring and management. So we have three different processes here, that is mitigation, monitoring and management. So when what to do it, let's see. Say all the risk analysis activities. Now we are in the analysis here. All the risk analysis activities presented to this point have a single goal: to assist the project team in developing strategies for dealing with the risk. An effective risk strategy must consider three issues. These are our risk strategies. Okay, mitigation, that is avoidance. Okay, we try to avoid it here. Monitoring, and finally management and contingency plan. Okay, everything, so whatever the analysis activity you are doing, okay, that is nothing that we used to like the say project team we are assisting to develop a proper risk strategies. Okay, effective strategy, so that we can avoid the whatever the possible risk. Okay, so that we can monitor the possible risk, and so that we can manage all those risks. Okay, so that's why we have these three issues. Okay, and so that is risk mitigation, how can we avoid the risk. Then monitoring is that what factors can we track, right, that will enable us to determine if the risk is becoming more or less likely. Okay, and risk management, that is like what contingency plan do we have. Okay, if the risk becomes a reality, means it's happened. All right, so we have to make a backup contingency plan. So this is about the management. So these are the three the issues that we have to make it for effective strategy. Okay, risk strategy. Now risk mitigation. So we have already learned that it is planning. Okay, risk mitigation planning is the process of developing the options and actions to enhance the opportunity and reduce the threats to the project objectivities. Mostly it is what we are trying to do is that we avoid or we reduce the threats to the project objective. This is the risk mitigation. Okay, then it involves the taking actions to reduce the organization's exposures, okay, to potential risk, and reduce the likelihood that those risks will happen again. This is the main objective of this mitigation. Okay, so we also have we can have some more example to be discussed again under this, that is how this risk avoidance. Okay, I'll say that risk avoidance means risk mitigation. Okay, when do we achieve it? All right, that is by developing a plan for risk mitigation, because we know that risk mitigation try to reduce the threats of the project objectives. So for example here, assume that no high staff turnover is noted as a project risk. Say during the project identification, consider that during the project identification we have noted that high staff turnover is one of the project risk. Okay, then based on the history and the management institution, say the likelihood means the probability of the high okay, turnover is estimated to be 70% rather high. Okay, that is the high turnover will have a critical impact on the project cost and schedule, right? So to mitigate this risk, the project manager must develop a strategy for reducing the turnover. Among the possible steps to be taken are, we can see, okay, I'm going to discuss here the example here. That is, first of all, what we'll do. Okay, so we have already identified what is our the project risk, that is the staff turnover, isn't it? Then what we'll do is that project strategy has to be planned, isn't it, to reduce the staff turnover. So that is that meet with the current staff. Okay, first of all, the first strategy may be meet with the current staff to determine the causes for the turnover. Okay, say for example, poor working conditions or low pay, or maybe say competitive job markets, many are there. Okay, maybe because of that, isn't it? So maybe some of this, maybe some cause of this staff turnover. Then in order to know that, you have to meet with the current staff. Then next is that we also can do that, mitigate those causes that are under our control before the project starts. Okay, that has to be, first of all, that has to be kept within our control, isn't it? So once the project commences, then say assume turnover will occur and develop the techniques to ensure the continuity when the people lived, right? So this is, again, this is assume. We are saying that assume means we are just this is one of the possible risk, isn't it? Then next strategy we can do, like organize the project team so that information about each development activity is widely dispersed. Okay, then next, define the documentation standards and establish the mechanism to be sure that documents are developed in a timely manner. Okay, so then conduct peer reviewing. It is very helpful. Conduct peering review, okay, of all the work. Okay, this is most common and very helpful strategy in all the, especially in the staff turnover. Okay, assign a backup staff member for every critical say technologies. This is our contingency. Okay, right, like this is the contingency plan. So these are some one example of the risk mitigation and how do we try to reduce this and avoid this kind of the this kind means the staff turnover risk. And now the next is risk monitoring. So as the project proceeds, the risk monitoring activities commence, isn't it? So once we proceed, then definitely monitoring is very much required. So we start monitoring. The project managers monitors, okay, that factors that may provide an indication of whether the risk is becoming more or less likely. So we are not, in this case, we are not monitoring that your progress of the project. Okay, we are monitoring the risk, whether the risk is becoming more or less likely. Okay, then in the case of high staff turnover, the following factors can be monitored. Okay, this is once again the example. In this example, we are taking again the turnover, the staff turnover. So if staff turnover is happening, okay, then what to be monitored is that general attitude of the team members based on the project pressure. Is there any like a general attitude, okay, of the team members based on the project pressure? no, it is there or not, that is has to be monitored. Okay, then interpersonal relationship among the team members, because we know that team means more than one members are working. So is there any problem, is there any misunderstanding, or is there any the gap, or that not cooperating among themselves? Okay, these are some things that has to be the monitor, because we already identified that there may be some way that there may be staff may turn over. Okay, staff are leaving the job. For example, we have a good members, okay, good team members there, but they are leaving the job. So maybe why they are leaving the job, why they want to leave the job. Okay, so there may be certain reason. Okay, that is like we are paying less, or maybe the project pressure is too high. Okay, maybe they are not getting the good relationship among themselves, isn't it? So these are the possible risks, so that has to be monitored. Is it happening? Okay, that is the process of the risk monitoring. Okay, potential problems with the say compensation and the benefits has to be prepared. Then availability of the job within the company and outside it. So these are some of the the steps that the project manager has to monitor if we have some cases of like high staff turnover. And then finally, risk management. So risk management and contingency planning assumes that mitigation efforts have failed and that the risk has become a reality. Know that mitigation effort, that is why we are trying to avoid all those kind of the risk, isn't it? Whatever the risk, but it is failed. Okay, whatever we tried, the effort have failed, and that the risk has become a reality. Okay, then what do you do? The management and contingency plan has to be ready, isn't it? But in this case, what we are doing is that we just assume that if mitigation is failed, then what to do it, isn't it? That means if we try to minimize, or we try to avoid all the identified risks. Okay, I have identified say 10 risks, so 10 risks is identified, so all are failed, suppose. Okay, I was unable to, means the mitigation process was unable to avoid all these things. Then what to do it? That has to be assumed by this process of risk management. Okay, then continuing the example. Okay, so what is our example? Okay, let's see it. The project is well underway and several people announced that they will be leaving. So our example at the present is that staff high turnover, isn't it? So for the large project, we are having say 30 or 40 risks may be identified, and if so between the 3 and 7 risk management steps are identified for each, risk management may become a project. Means it will be really a big, okay, this become a project. So for this reason, so we adapt the peer to 80-20 rule. This is actually, this 80-20 rule is a some decision making rule, different principles. Okay, that if you are really interested, you can see the details. Peer to 80-20 rules, a principle is there for taking the decision, okay, to the software risk. So we are going to adapt this 80-20 rules. Is in this case, okay, this is I'm not giving this 80 or I'm not giving this 20. This is the rule, the name of the rule, that pair to 80-20 rule. Okay, so experience indicates that 80% of the overall project risk, that is 80%. Okay, that means 80% of the potential for the project failure can be accounted for, okay, by only 80% of the identified risk. Okay, let me translate this after this. Okay, let's see the last point, that is the work performed during the earlier risk analysis steps will help the planner to determine which of the risk resides in that 20%. Okay, for example, risk that leads to the highest risk exposure. For this reason, some of the risks identified, assessed, and projected may not fall into the critical 20%. Okay, the risk with highest project priority. In short, no, the meaning is that supposing I have identified 20. Okay, there is a 20 risk is identified. We cannot identify all the 100, isn't it? There is a, so in large project we are saying that risk, how many risks are identified in the large project, it is saying that mostly say 30 or 40 risks may be identified, isn't it? So according to, in this case we are going to use this peer to 80-20 rule to the software risk. We are going to adapt this rule, that is supposing we are identified that 20 is as an input, supposing, so out of the 20 that identified, yeah, all the 20, at least 80% are coming out from this 20. That means I already plan, no, we already try to mitigate it, all this the risk, isn't it? All this risk factor has been identified, we already mitigate that, the risk. Okay, based on that, this impact and prioritize, we already prioritize based on this impact, and that means that I have say it is like in the exam also I have given you some 20 questions, okay, random 20 questions given. So out of 20, 80% are coming from that 20 questions, and that means remaining only to 20% you have to you have to prepare right by your own study, isn't it? That means 80% are comes true from that input given to you. The question suggestion, 20 questions are given as a suggestion during your exam. 20 questions I have given, so 80% of them come. That means out of 20, say the 16 questions come, then you will be very happy. This is a great success of your study, isn't it? Because we already identified that, I have suggested, okay, the most possible questions that may come in the exam are, okay, you study this 20 question, then you thoroughly study this 20 questions, and out of the 20 questions, 18 questions are come. That means you could be able to solve the answer very nicely, isn't it? So that is the meaning, the very simple meaning behind this 80-20 rule. Okay, so this is about the today's class. All right, see you in the next class.